While they watch you in regret, Scorpio ascends into their destiny. There's a moment in every Scorpio's life when the energy shifts, so silently, so powerfully, that the world doesn't even realize it's happening until the aftermath is undeniable. One day you're grieving a connection, questioning your worth, replaying the betrayal like a broken record. And the next, you've disappeared into your own depth. You've turned inward, transformed, reborn. But what if, just as you're rising into your peace, the very person who once pulled away now feels magnetically drawn back in? What if the silence you've held, not out of bitterness but out of sacred healing, has become the very thing that's haunting them? And what if the message you've been waiting for isn't just a text, but a divine moment, a soul awakening wrapped in human form? Scorpio, this isn't a love story. This is a power story. Because while they were busy seeking distraction, you were busy seeking truth. While they entertained illusions, you faced the mirror. While they ran from what they couldn't control, you walked through fire with no guarantee of return. You stopped chasing, you started healing. You became the storm they couldn't prepare for and the stillness they'll never forget. This video isn't about waiting on someone else to validate your worth. It's about what happens when a Scorpio finally stops explaining, stops reaching, and begins to embody the sacred energy they were born with. It's about what unfolds when you become the message. Because the universe doesn't speak in coincidence, Scorpio, it speaks in alignment. And what's aligning now is a karmic echo of something you once let go of, but that never truly let go of you. In the next few moments, you'll understand why your silence was the loudest message you've ever sent. You'll feel why your absence shook their world more than your presence ever could. And most importantly, you'll remember that you were never waiting for them. They were always trying to catch up to you. Let's begin. Part 1, the return of the past. They thought you were done, Scorpio. They thought they had figured you out, labeled you, boxed you up in a chapter they closed without ceremony. To them, walking away felt like control, like power, like a clean break from something they were too afraid to fully feel. But what they didn't realize was that the moment they pulled away, they unknowingly triggered one of the most sacred processes in the zodiac, the Scorpio transformation. This isn't just about someone coming back. This is about the energetic return of a karmic echo, one that you buried beneath oceans of silence, but that never stopped vibrating across the spiritual field between your soul and theirs. There's someone in your energy now, Scorpio. They've been watching quietly, silently, pretending to have moved on, pretending that they're content, but their spirit is restless. Their heart feels something they can't explain. It's not just nostalgia, it's regret wrapped in revelation. They're starting to see you not as the one who chased them, not as the one who tried to make things work, but as the mirror they couldn't face. You see, this person is beginning to understand something that terrifies them. You were never chasing them. You were trying to give them a chance to meet you on your level. And now that you've ascended even higher, they're feeling the gap like a chasm between two worlds. They scroll through old photos, reread messages, wonder if the door is still open. But it is, not in the way they hope, because the Scorpio they remember doesn't exist anymore. Scorpio energy doesn't stand still, it doesn't cling. It evolves, and while they were living in circles, chasing temporary highs and shallow attention, you were in solitude, breaking apart and rebuilding piece by sacred piece. And now they feel the shift. They sense that something's different in you. The glow, the stillness, the strength behind your eyes. They can't name it, but they know they no longer have access to it. And that realization, it stings. This is the paradox they're sitting in. The more they avoided you, the deeper they fell into your energy. The more they tried to forget you, the more unforgettable you became. And the more they distanced themselves, the louder the silence became in their own soul. It's not guilt that haunts them, it's recognition. Recognition that they ran not from you but from themselves. And now they want to return, but not just to say hello, they want clarity, closure, and maybe, just maybe, a second chance. But Scorpio, here's the truth, this isn't about them anymore. It's about what you've become while they were gone, because the person they left behind doesn't live here anymore. You've built something in the ruins. You've planted gardens in the grief. You've turned your pain into prophecy. And now they're arriving at a door that no longer opens with the same key. What happens next isn't about revenge. It isn't about proving your worth. It's about standing at that threshold with the full knowing of who you are and choosing whether they belong in your future or were only meant to shape your past. The past is reaching out, but you, Scorpio, have become the future. Part 2, the silent transformation. There's a reason silence unnerves people, Scorpio. Not because it's empty, but because it's full of things they can't access, truths, emotions, power. And you, Scorpio, you've mastered the language of silence, not as a weapon, not as a manipulation, but as sacred space. A realm where the soul reshapes itself, away from noise, away from validation, away from the gaze of those who never truly saw you. While the world thought you were quiet, you were actually deep in spiritual labor. This was not a disappearance. This was an initiation. When they walked away, when the connection fractured, when the ones you held close proved unworthy of your loyalty, you didn't scream. You didn't retaliate, you retreated into the underworld of your own being. It's in that darkness where others would panic or grasp or lash out that you found the divine. You faced yourself, the brokenness, the fear, the rage. You sat with your grief and let it teach you things no one else could. And from that sacred descent, you began to remember. You remembered that your worth is not dependent on being chosen, that your love is not a bargaining chip, that your soul is not a project for someone else to complete. In your solitude, you found your source. And from that source, you began to rebuild, not just your outer life, but your energetic signature. What once reached out is now magnetized inward. You no longer chase, you no longer explain, you simply align. And those who are meant for you will feel it and rise or fall away. This transformation wasn't loud. There were no declarations, no dramatic posts, no cryptic messages begging to be decoded. Just stillness, just sacred boundaries, just the quiet unfurling of a new self. And that's what they don't understand. They look at you now and see the glow, the peace, the confidence, but they missed the fire it took to forge it. They don't know about the nights your heart ached so badly you forgot what safe felt like. They don't know how many pieces you had to pull back from people who never deserved them to begin with. They don't know that your silence was not indifference. It was sacred self-respect. Scorpio, you didn't shut them out. They just couldn't meet you in the place you were rising toward. And now, as they peer back into your life from a distance, confused, curious, longing, they're sensing that something is different, but they don't know how different. Because you're no longer waiting, you're no longer mourning what could have been, you're no longer the same soul who begged for clarity, you've become the clarity. This is what true transformation looks like, not flashy, not loud, but unshakable. Irrefutable, untouchable. And as you move through the world with that quiet power, you're not asking anyone to notice. But they are, oh they are, because your silence has become your signature. And your presence now speaks what your words no longer need to. Part 3, Ancestral Protection. There are things about you, Scorpio, that you didn't choose. They were chosen for you before you ever arrived in this lifetime. Your intensity, your depth, your sacred silence, your ability to see through people as though they're made of glass. These are not random traits, they are spiritual inheritances. You were born into a bloodline that remembers. A soul lineage that stretches far beyond this moment, this body, this heartbreak. And whether or not you've ever lit a candle in their name, your ancestors have been lighting fires for you in the unseen. You are not alone in your transformation. You are not walking this path without guidance. Even in your most isolated hours, even when you felt abandoned by love, confused by destiny, there were eyes watching from beyond the veil. And not watching in judgment. Watching in protection. Your growth hasn't just been emotional, it's been generational. Every time you cut off a toxic pattern, every time you chose silence over war, wisdom over revenge, solitude over codependence, you weren't just healing yourself. You were healing them, your grandmother's unspoken grief, your father's abandoned dreams, your ancestors' silenced intuition. They live in you, and through you they rise. That's why this moment feels so pivotal. Because you're not just making decisions for yourself, you're making decisions for an entire line of spirits who never got to break the cycle. And now the ones who once took your love lightly. The ones who ghosted you, manipulated your depth, or mocked your sensitivity. They're feeling the shift not just in you, but in the field around you. Scorpio, you are cloaked in spiritual protection. The people who once had easy access to your energy are now sensing an invisible barrier, like something divine is guarding the gate. And it is. It's not just that you've raised your standards. It's that you're no longer walking alone. The ancestors who were silenced are now speaking through your intuition. The guides who witnessed your heartbreak are now whispering clarity in your dreams. The spirits who once wept for your pain are now sharpening your vision. This is why their return feels different now. It's not romantic, it's not exciting, it's heavy, because they're not just facing you. They're facing the legacy behind you. The divine knows what you've endured. It saw what was done in the dark. And now it's restoring balance in a language only the soul understands. So don't be surprised if the people who once dismissed you begin to speak differently, more gently, more cautiously. They're sensing something. They don't know what it is, but they feel the presence around you. They feel the sacred. Let them wonder, let them question, let them feel the weight of what they once overlooked. Because this time, it's not just about being seen. It's about being recognized as the keeper of a divine lineage, as the voice of those who came before, as the embodiment of sacred strength. Scorpio, your ancestors didn't survive the fire just for you to play small. They didn't whisper through lifetimes for you to be ignored. They've carried you here for a reason. And now, you are walking in their purpose with your own power. Part 4, the person regrets, but Scorpio has evolved. They thought time would dull the connection. They assumed that if they stayed away long enough, the feelings would fade, the memories would blur, and your presence would become just another closed chapter. But that's not how it works with Scorpio. Not when the bond ran soul deep. Not when the love came from a place so pure, so rare, that they didn't even recognize it until it was gone. Now they're beginning to realize what they walked away from. And that realization is crushing, not because they lost a relationship, but because they lost a version of themselves that only existed in your presence. You saw something in them no one else did. You held space for their darkness, their chaos, their confusion. You offered a kind of love that didn't demand perfection, just truth. And in return, they gave you silence, distance, excuses. They were afraid not of you, but of what they saw in your eyes, a reflection of their own untapped potential, the version of themselves they hadn't grown into yet. And so they ran. They told themselves you were too much, too intense, too deep. But what they really meant was, you saw too much, you felt too much. You challenged the version of me I was comfortable being. Now they're watching from afar, and what they see is the Scorpio they left behind, the wounded version gone. The one who questioned everything, who begged for understanding, who tried to explain their value. gone. In your place stands someone entirely new, still you, but reborn. Now they see your glow, and it's not the kind of glow that seeks attention. It's the glow of someone who walked through fire and came back with gold. The glow of someone who made peace with the pain and used it as a portal to power. They want to reach out. They want to ask how you are, what you're doing, whether you still think of them. But they don't know how, because they can feel the energetic difference now. And deep down, they know. You've outgrown the space where they left you. They see your strength, your boundaries, your unbothered focus. And it rattles them not because you're cold, but because you're whole. And here's the hardest truth for them to face. They never expected you to heal without them. They assumed their absence would keep you circling, but instead it set you free. And now they're the one circling. They're the one wondering what could have been. They're the one feeling the ache they once caused. But Scorpio, you've reached a place of clarity. You no longer seek closure, you've created it. You no longer crave answers, you embody them. You no longer wait for someone to love you right, you've become the love you needed. Their regret is real, their longing is genuine, but it doesn't mean you owe them entry into your new life, because evolution doesn't apologize for who it leaves behind. Let them feel the weight of their choices. Let them see who you've become, not out of pride, but out of reverence. For yourself, for your journey, for the sacred version of you that emerged from the ashes. You are no longer someone who can be abandoned because you no longer abandon yourself. Part 5, Divine Timing, and the message arrives. There are moments in life when everything aligns, not because we forced it, chased it, or begged for it, but because we let go. And Scorpio, you've done the one thing the universe responds to the most. You surrendered, not in weakness, but in wisdom. You stopped needing to know when they'd return. You stopped refreshing the message thread. You stopped checking the astrology transits, hoping for signs. You stopped wondering what went wrong. And in that sacred space of surrender, something shifted. Because you see, the divine doesn't operate on human time. It doesn't care how long it's been since they ghosted. It doesn't respond to begging, manifesting out of desperation, or forcing destiny. It waits until you're no longer attached, until the lesson has landed, until the soul is no longer seeking validation, but vibrating in truth. And now that you've detached completely, the message arrives, not always as a text, sometimes as a dream, sometimes as a strange, accidental encounter. Sometimes through someone else's words, but it comes because what's meant for you doesn't miss you, it simply waits for the version of you that can receive it. And here's the thing. The message isn't just from them, it's also from the universe. A whisper saying, you've done well, you've released, you've grown. And now here's the closure you no longer need but have earned. But let's talk about them for a moment. This person, the one who ran, hid, dismissed your depth, is suddenly feeling the pressure of divine timing on their shoulders. They're waking up with a tight chest, unexplainable memories, a pull they thought they'd buried. And it's not nostalgia, it's karma. They're being nudged. Their dreams are flooded with symbols. The song that played when you first met, it's on repeat. The scent of your presence lingers in random places. They're beginning to wonder, what if I made the biggest mistake of my life? And as this awareness blooms in them, the universe places them at a crossroads. Reach out or lose the chance forever. So they pick up the phone, they hover over the screen, they type, delete, retype, and finally they send the message. But by the time it reaches you, Scorpio, you're not the same person who once waited for it. You don't need it anymore. You've already made peace with the silence. You've already written the ending in your own language. This is the paradox of divine timing. It gives you exactly what you once prayed for, but only after you've stopped needing it. And now that you've evolved, the message is no longer a lifeline, it's confirmation. that you were right to walk away, that your intuition was never wrong, that your silence had a purpose. So read the message if it comes. Smile, acknowledge the moment. But know this, the real message wasn't in their words. It was in your growth. It was in every tear you cried alone. In every night you stayed silent instead of chasing. In every boundary you held. In every version of you that rose from the ashes more powerful than before. That's the message. And Scorpio, you heard it long before they ever sent theirs. Part 6 is spiritual power of silence. They used to mistake your silence for punishment, as if you were trying to teach them a lesson, to make them feel guilty, to win some invisible game of control. But Scorpio, your silence was never about them. It was about you, your soul, your healing, your evolution. Because there comes a point in every Scorpio's life where words fall short, where explaining your worth becomes exhausting, where proving your value feels like begging for crumbs at a table you were born to own. And so, you go quiet, but it's not empty, it's sacred. You stop arguing, you stop defending. You stop justifying your love, your vision, your intensity. And in that holy withdrawal, you become more powerful than you've ever been. Because silence is not absence, it's presence in its purest form. It's the space where your energy speaks louder than your voice ever could. It's where your ancestors whisper, where your intuition sharpens, where your spirit recalibrates. And that's what they didn't understand. They thought you went cold, they thought you gave up. They thought you were punishing them, but what really happened, you chose peace over chaos, you chose depth over drama, you chose you. And now, your silence is no longer just the absence of sound. It's the presence of power. It's what people feel when they enter your orbit and suddenly remember their own truth. It's what ex-lovers dream about but can't explain. It's what former friends try to replicate but can't touch. Because you didn't just stop speaking. You started vibrating at a level where only the aligned can hear you. And those who once misunderstood your quiet are now haunted by it. They scroll your page but find no clues. They ask mutual friends but receive only soft shrugs. They feel your presence like a memory and a mirror, one they can't escape but also can't re-enter. That's the thing about spiritual silence. It's not passive, it's protective. It's purifying, it's proof that you've stepped out of the old frequency and into your divine one. So when they finally break their silence, when they reach out, test the waters, try to see if your heart is still accessible, they're met with something they never expected. Stillness, not indifference, but peace. No anger, no explanation, just the weight of your evolution hanging in the space between you. Because what once would have pulled you back in now barely registers. What once hurt you now feels distant, like an old story from a life you've outgrown. Scorpio, you've entered a new realm, one where your silence is no longer a retreat, it's a statement. A declaration that your time, your love, your soul are no longer available to those who took them for granted. Let your silence continue to speak, because the right ones will hear it not as rejection, but as invitation. Invitation to rise, to reflect, to return to themselves first before they ever approach you again. And those who don't, they were never meant to meet you at this level. Part 7, your vibration has shifted. There's something you might not even realize, Scorpio. It's not that you've changed, it's that you've shifted. At a cellular, spiritual, vibrational level, you've raised your frequency. And now, not everyone can feel you the same way. Not everyone can access you. Not everyone can even recognize you anymore. The version of you that once over-explained, overgave, overloved, it's gone. Not because you're cold, but because you're clear. The work you've done on yourself, quietly, consistently, deeply, has created an energetic filter. The people who used to drain you, they now feel blocked. The ones who once manipulated you, their tricks fall flat. Even those who once captivated you now feel dull, and they don't understand why. Why the old dynamics don't work anymore, why you don't react, why your eyes no longer beg to be seen. It's because your vibration has shifted. You're operating on a new frequency, and only those who have done their own work can meet you there. It's not personal, it's energetic law. You see, when you rise into alignment with your highest self, you become unavailable to those operating in shadow, in ego, in fear. And here's what's really powerful. You don't have to cut anyone off. You don't have to explain why they no longer fit. You don't have to scream boundaries or demand respect. Your energy does it for you. It speaks a language that says, I no longer resonate with chaos. I no longer sacrifice my peace for proximity. I no longer lower my frequency to be understood by those who choose not to grow. And they feel it. They might not be able to name it. But they feel the wall, not a wall of anger, but a wall of vibration. They try to reach you, but they're calling a number that no longer exists. They ask mutuals about you, but your name carries a different charge now. One that says, elevated, untouchable, divine. Scorpio, this is not arrogance, it's alignment. You're not isolating yourself. You're being preserved by the universe, by your ancestors, by your higher self, because where you're going. Only the brave, the healed, the honest can follow. And if you've felt lonely lately, don't confuse that with being lost. You're not alone, you're just ahead. You've graduated from karmic lessons others are still struggling to identify. You've broken contracts in silence that others are still trapped in out of fear. And now your aura speaks volumes. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere, not because you demand it, but because you are it. Your vibration calls in the aligned and repels the familiar but toxic. So when people from the past start drifting, ghosting, or acting confused, smile, your energy is doing the work, sorting, filtering, elevating. And if someone truly wants to be in your life now, they'll have to rise to meet you. They'll have to do their inner work. They'll have to earn access, not by proving themselves to you, but by proving themselves to themselves. Because Scorpio, you're not a destination, you're a portal. Only those ready to evolve can step through. Part 8, Final Awakening. Something has shifted inside them. They may not say it out loud. They may not even fully understand it yet. But deep in their bones, they feel it, that the love they ran from was never ordinary. That what they lost wasn't just a connection, it was a spiritual mirror. And now, Scorpio. They're awakening, but awakening never happens in comfort. It arrives through consequence. They're starting to replay it all. The way you looked at them, eyes filled with truth, even when they couldn't face it. The way you never demanded, only offered love, depth, healing, transformation. The way you held space for their shadows before they even knew how to name them. And now that you're gone, that sacred space is gone too. They're realizing it wasn't you they were afraid of. It was who they were becoming in your presence. Because loving a Scorpio doesn't just feel deep, it changes you. But instead of stepping into that change, they resisted it. And in doing so, they resisted themselves. Now they sit with the silence, with the memories, with the haunting presence of everything unspoken. And they begin to ask the questions that used to scare them. What if I was wrong? What if I sabotaged something divine? What if they were never the problem, I just wasn't ready? Scorpio, their awakening isn't beautiful, it's messy, painful. Raw, they're not basking in clarity. They're breaking open under the weight of their own illusions, because now they see your worth but through the lens of absence. Now they recognize your love but only after betraying it. Now they're ready, but they don't know if the door still exists. And here's where the story shifts entirely, because you, Scorpio, you're no longer waiting at that door. You became the door, the portal, the transformation. And not everyone gets to walk through it twice. So even if they come back, even if the message arrives, even if the apology is real, your soul knows the difference between a return and a resurrection. Between I miss you and I've changed. It's between I remember who you were and I honor who you've become. Let them awaken, let them reflect, let them feel every ounce of the pain they avoided when they left you behind. But don't descend to meet them, don't shrink to soothe their guilt. Don't pause your growth for the sake of their regret, because this is their journey now, their karma, their initiation, and you've already passed through your fire. You've already been tested, refined, reborn. Now you walk in light, not the blinding kind, but the soft, steady glow of someone who knows who they are and who they'll never be again. Their awakening may be late, but your timing is perfect. Scorpio, you were never waiting for their message. You were waiting for your own voice to rise, and now that it has, the question is no longer, will they return? It's, do they still deserve a seat in the new temple you've built? Because what returns isn't always meant to stay. Sometimes it only comes back so you can see how far you've come. Part 9, the breakthrough and the shift in the connection. There comes a moment, Scorpio, when what was once heavy suddenly becomes light. When the questions that haunted you begin to dissolve. Not because someone finally gave you the answers, but because you outgrew the need to ask, and that moment is now. The breakthrough isn't what they think it is, it's not in their return. It's not in their message, it's not even in their apology. The real breakthrough happened in you. You no longer flinch when their name pops up. You no longer search for signs in every silence. You no longer fantasize about closure or replay old conversations hoping to rewrite the ending. You've arrived at a place where your peace is louder than your pain. And your soul, it has no interest in negotiating with the past. But here's the twist. Just as you've risen, just as you've detached, just as you've cleared your field, they feel it and suddenly they find their courage. They come forward. Maybe it's a voice note, maybe a heartfelt paragraph, maybe a spontaneous call. Whatever the form, it carries the weight of years, the weight of unsaid things, the weight of karma finally catching up to the one who thought time would erase what they refused to confront. They say all the things they couldn't say before. I wasn't ready. You didn't deserve that. I still think about you. I made a mistake. And you. You listen, calm, steady, whole, not because you're detached, but because you've integrated every part of the story. You've felt the fire. You've walked through the ruins. You've met yourself in every place they abandoned you. So now when they speak, you hear them differently. You see the pain behind their words. You see the growth, yes. But you also see the parts of them that are still not whole. And here's the truth: Scorpio rarely speaks out loud. Forgiveness does not always mean reunion. Closure does not always mean reconnection. It's because while they were breaking down, you were building something, a new world, a new frequency, a new version of yourself that no longer matches the rhythm of who they were, or who they may still be. That's the shift in the connection. You're no longer magnetized to their pull. You're no longer tied to their absence. You've become the gravitational force in your own orbit, and they now have to decide whether they're willing to rise to meet it or remain in the timeline they created without you. And you no longer chase timelines. You align with divine ones, so if their breakthrough is real, if they've truly awakened, it won't be proven in words, it'll be proven in energy, in consistency, in their capacity to meet you where you are now, not where you were when they left, because you don't need someone to complete you. You need someone who's done the work to meet you, and if they have, you'll feel it. Not in your heart's desperation, but in your soul's calm. If they have, you'll feel that too, and without judgment, without resentment, you'll let them go again, this time with grace. Because Scorpio, the ultimate power is not in holding on. It's in knowing when to bless the return and when to honor the departure again. Part 10, the sacred conclusion, destiny, peace, and what comes next. So here we are, Scorpio, at the edge of something sacred, not a reunion, not a text thread reopened, not a love story rewritten, but something far more powerful. A soul completing a cycle. You've been through the fire, you've danced with shadows, you've held space for others while learning how to hold space for yourself. You've loved deeply, fallen silently, healed privately, and risen magnificently. Now the universe asks you a final question, not to test you, but to reflect your evolution back to you. What do you choose now? Because destiny is not a destination, it's a frequency. And Scorpio, your energy has aligned with something ancient and eternal. A rhythm that can no longer be interrupted by the temporary. A calling that cannot be answered with half-healed hands. They may have returned, they may have awakened. They may even be sincere, but sincerity does not equal readiness. And readiness does not equal alignment. So what comes next is not a romantic decision, it's a sacred one. Do you open the gate again, not out of loneliness? Not out of nostalgia, but from a soul knowing that says, this time it's real, or do you bless their growth from afar? Do you send them love and keep walking? Because your path, your peace, your purpose has expanded beyond the story they were once a part of. Either way, you win, because the real victory wasn't in their returns. It was in your remembrance. The moment you realized, I am not the person who needed them. I am the person who found myself in their absence. Let that truth land in your body. Let it move through your heart like a sacred drumbeat. You are no longer in the vibration of waiting. You are in the vibration of receiving. You are no longer proving your worth. You are embodying it. Scorpio, this is your moment, not to reopen old wounds, but to walk forward with clarity, peace, and unshakable power. You're not just loved. You're chosen by your ancestors, by your higher self, by the divine. The quiet you've cultivated has become your cathedral. The pain you've processed has become your protection. And the love you once gave away so freely, it now returns to you, refined, radiant, and rooted. So whether you walk forward alone or with someone who has truly risen beside you, you walk with truth, you walk with grace, you walk with the knowing that nothing real is ever lost, it only transforms. And you, Scorpio, you are transformation made flesh, final reflection plus call to action. So what have we learned, Scorpio? That sometimes the message we've waited for comes, but only when we've outgrown the need for it. That sometimes the ones who left return, but by then we've returned to ourselves. You are not defined by who walked away. You are defined by how you rose. Through silence, you discovered your strength. Through solitude, you uncovered your soul. And through every broken piece, you became whole. This wasn't just about love. This was about alignment, about remembering who you are in the absence of who you thought you needed. Scorpio, you don't chase energy, you attract truth. You don't plead to be seen. You walk in light so powerful, even those who tried to forget you can't look away. And now you have a choice, not about going back, but about going deeper, into yourself, into your purpose, into the future that's been waiting for you to finally say, I'm ready. Let this be your reminder. If someone left you confused, broken, or unseen, let them see you now, not to prove anything, but because your peace is proof. Now I want to hear from you, Scorpio. Has someone recently returned into your energy? Have you felt a shift in your vibration? Are you walking away for good, or is the door still cracked open? Drop your story in the comments. You never know who needs your voice to find their own. And if this message spoke to you in any way, honor your journey by subscribing to the channel. Here on the path to Buddhist wisdom, we don't just decode the stars, we walk through fire. We rise in silence, and we remember the truth of who we are together. Until next time, Scorpio. Keep your peace sacred, keep your frequency high, and keep becoming the version of you that no longer waits because you already are what you once sought. The next chapter begins now.